Hello everybody, this is Mr. Green, and I wanted to make another video, a follow-up to our previous one on school accountability. So in the last video we kind of talked about how our school is measured and what we are responsible to the state for. So I want to do a follow-up of now, what are we doing about it? Okay, we kind of went over our scores and where we are, and they are low. So like I said, today we're going to talk about what the school is doing about our low scores. So some district-wide initiatives. The biggest one that we've been engaged in for a few years is a guaranteed and viable curriculum. We're working with a company out of Fargo called Cultivate 21. Essentially what that does is it helps us get all of our curriculum and what is actually taught down on paper and make sure that it's guaranteed so that all students who go through these courses get the exact same curriculum. It doesn't matter on what teacher you have. You get the exact same material. And then a viable curriculum is one where we can actually get through it in a calendar year. So often we think of the curriculum as just the textbook and you never get to chapters 12, 13, and 14. So we want to take a good hard look at our curriculum, make sure that it is the same and equal for all students, and ensure that we can actually teach those things within the school year. So we are on year 3 of 5 of that process. Throughout the district, each building's kind of at a different spot, so we are working very diligently in that regard. The other thing is last year we received about a $2 million literacy grant to push literacy throughout the district. So with that, we've been able to fund quite a few positions. Our instructional coaches, or our literacy coaches, and our curriculum directors. So that has been a huge boost to the school. They also had an outside audit that came in and looked at pretty much everything we're doing and gave us lots of great constructive feedback on things that we can improve. So with that literacy grant, one of the biggest purchases that we made immediately was a writing curriculum. So K-12, we have a writing curriculum, an actual resource on how to teach writing. I will say in the secondary level, this is rare. Typically, K-5 elementary schools will have writing curriculum, but then for some reason we think kids already know how to write or the teachers know how to teach writing, so we just kind of leave it up to them to figure it out. So I'm very excited that we purchased a product called Step Up to Writing. It focused specifically for the secondary level, and it has a lot of great resources for how to incorporate writing into math and how do you incorporate writing into science. And then there's lots of great things like graphic organizers and things that make writing easier for students, and it makes it easier for teachers to teach writing. I think historically we've kind of gone, well, write me a 2-page paper on this and go. And the students don't know where to start, they don't know what to do. Then we get pretty awful papers back and we go, these kids are terrible at writing, so we're not going to make them write anymore because they can't. So unfortunately it's kind of been ignored for the better part of the last few years. So we're digging back into that and we are building up those writing skills, and Step Up to Writing is a huge part of that. And then PLCs stands for Professional Learning Communities. This is really the engine of change throughout the district and throughout education. So what happens here is your groups of teachers, either all one grade at the elementary level or all one content area in the secondary level, are going to get together, they're going to meet, and they're going to go over and review data. They're going to look at their curriculum. They're going to look at what assessments we are giving students and how our students are doing on them. Then they're going to compare the results from teacher to teacher, and they're going to figure out what are the most effective strategies for our students to learn that material. So if 2 teachers are teaching the same lesson, one teacher teaches it their way, the other teacher teaches the other way, they're going to look at their scores and compare them and see which one got the better scores, which students are learning the material more efficiently, and then they're both going to adopt the strategy that works the best. So one of the big changes that's come to this building then is Wednesday late starts in order to provide that time for those powerful conversations to happen in PLCs. So every Wednesday this year, school starts at 9:30. That gives us a full protected hour from 8:15 to 9:15 to have these conversations. And like I said, this will be the engine that drives the change throughout our district, but definitely in our building as well. So that's some of the rationale behind those Wednesday late starts, with our school day starting at 8:30 and going till 3:40, and the teacher workday being 8 to 4. It's very difficult to have enough time regularly to have those conversations and address the need that we have without trying to shake up the schedule a little bit. So there was a change at the state level that changed from a day's requirement to an hour's requirement that allowed us the flexibility to be able to do that. So this is the first year we've done it. So far, so good on Wednesday late starts. Some of the school-wide initiatives that we've taken here at Watford City High School, our Wolves Time Reading Initiative. We are in year 2 of this. Wolves Time historically has kind of been anything and everything. It's kind of been a catch-all for anything that we want to put into the school day. We put it into Wolves Time. But really last year, we really started to hammer down on reading. So during Wolves Time, students are expected to read. They can read whatever they like, whatever they have for that they read for pleasure, whether that's a magazine, a book, an article, what have you. They can read that. And then as far as grades, they write a 1-sentence summary each week. And then once a month, they write a more formal summary of what they are reading. So again, Wolves Time is a reading and literacy initiative. Literacy in the content area, again, this kind of goes back to our Step Up to Writing. We have incorporated writing into all of our content areas. There's an expectation that they'll have one writing assignment each unit. Last year it was one writing assignment per quarter. But with the Step Up to Writing, we've gotten a little bit smarter at how we can incorporate writing into our classes. So it's not always a 2-page reflection paper or a 5-page research paper. There's more structured paragraphs and different things that we can do that relate to the content area a little bit better. So we are integrating writing especially into the content area, and we're definitely working on reading as well. So the next thing, grading and retake policy. So grading and retake policy went in effect this year. So it's a minimum of 60-40 between summative assessments and formative assessments. So summative assessments are assessments that take place after the learning has been completed, after lessons have been taught. This is the time where students should know the material now. Formative assessments are assessments that take place while the learning is occurring. And the purpose of a formative assessment is to let the student know where they are in these areas and the teacher know where they are in these areas. So we want to increase the value of the summative assessment, because that's after the learning has taken place. Now you should know this material. That's what we want our grades to be based on. We don't want our grades to be based on completion work or how well or how good you are at bringing something home and bringing it back. It's not a responsibility grade. It should be a grade on how well you understand the content. So putting a value on those summative assessments, which should do that, is going to put that emphasis on knowing the material. And then we wanted to devalue the formative assessments because that's during the learning process. One of the best analogies for this type of grading policy is a sports team. You can think of your summative assessments as your games and your formative assessments as your practices. You don't have a practice record attached to a team. You only have a game record, So that's really what we are attempting to accomplish with this type of grading policy. So this year, the minimum for all classes was 60-40 summative to formative, and then next year it will be 90-10. And the reason we go that high with a 90-10 is because when 90% of your grade is based on a summative, if you get 100% on those summative tests, so you take a course and you get 100% on every test, okay? If your grade is based on how well you understand that content, it should be impossible for you to get anything less than an A, because you've demonstrated your content knowledge and your content mastery. So how can we give you anything less than an A if you have done that on those summative assessments? So we don't want homework and those types of things, daily work, to be pulling kids down. Okay, that's not what your grade should represent. It's not a responsibility grade. It's a grade on how well you understand that content. And that's where that 90-10 comes from. So when you move to a grading policy such as this, we had to adjust our eligibility policy. Because then the secondary part that I didn't talk about yet is the retake policy. So when you put that much emphasis on a summative assessment, you have to give students an ability to retake them if it doesn't go well. And really, I like to think of it not a retake policy, it's a relearn and a reteach policy. Okay? If you take an assessment and you fail that assessment, You, as a student, have failed to learn that, and the teacher has failed to teach it. Okay? It's on both sides. So a retake policy allows both sides to do more work so that that student does understand that material. Okay? So the retake policy is found in our handbook, but essentially all students are able to retake tests, and then the teacher sets forth the requirements in order to retake that. So that could be test corrections. That could mean you have to have all your homework turned in. Could mean you have to redo some of your homework assignments or things like that in order to retake. Okay, we don't want to just have a student take a test on Wednesday and Thursday they come in and take the exact same one. That's not going to benefit anyone. We want to give that student an opportunity to learn what they're missing, learn that content, and then be able to demonstrate that content mastery. So then the second part of that is your higher score will always go into the grade book. It won't be averaged and it won't be taken down, because if you can demonstrate that you understand and have mastered 90% of the content, then you should get a 90. It shouldn't be averaged or whatever just because it took you a little bit longer to get to that content understanding and content mastery. So that's grading and retake. And then once we implemented that, we had to take a look at our eligibility policy. We used to check eligibility every single week, and it just put a lot of pressure on teachers and students to make sure you are never failing. You had zero room for error. You had to keep that grade above an F literally at all times. So when you put 90% on a test, everybody's had a bad test. Everybody didn't sleep the night before. You come in and you do terribly. You need time to retake that. So we updated the eligibility policy to reflect that, and it was really that grading and retake policy that drove the eligibility policy. So now we check grades for every student every 5 weeks. If you are eligible at the 5-week mark, your grades do not get checked for another 5 weeks. So you have some time. If you need to retake and you might have an F this week, you have time to take care of that before the next 5-week grading policy. If you are ineligible, you are ineligible for a week, and if you are eligible on week 6, then you would be eligible for the next 4 weeks. So you can work your way off of that ineligibility as soon as you are passing all of your courses. So it takes a little bit of the responsibility off of us to hold students under our thumb all the time to make sure that they're passing everything, and puts a little more responsibility on the students to make sure that they keep track of their grades and are able to stay eligible during those every 5-week grading periods. So the other thing that we are doing here is we've taken on an initiative to improve our instructional practices across the board. There's great research into instructional practices, and we really tried to find ones that are easy to implement, that we know have been effective and have been demonstrated time and time again to be effective. So the first one is learning targets, and that's essentially just posting somewhere in your room and discussing what it is that you want the students to learn that day. It's demystifying education. It's telling the students exactly what they're going to be responsible for knowing, so that as you go throughout the lesson, the students know what they are expected to learn. Okay. Engagement strategies are some different things that teachers can do during class. Choral response, structured partner talks, and cold calling are engagement strategies that everybody can implement pretty easily, and it just keeps classes moving quickly, and it keeps the students engaged in doing something. With engagement strategies, we really look and we talk to our staff about what are your students doing. They should always be doing something, or every 5-10 minutes, keep them engaged. It shouldn't be a sit and listen for 45 straight minutes. So if they're able to respond chorally, or they're required to, if they have to turn and talk to their partner about something, or if they know it's a random cold calling and they could be called on at any time, those are things that keep students engaged, and they have to pay attention at that point. So trying to incorporate those are going to improve our instruction. And the last one we talked a little bit about with our literacy in the content area is authentic literacy. That's authentic reading, writing, and speaking. And what we mean by authentic is it's related to the content area and real life, essentially. So it's not, even math class, I'm not going to write a 2-page paper about what I did last weekend. I may write a structured paragraph about how to solve this problem. I'm going to write out in detail each one of those steps, and I'm going to practice those technical writing skills that can be very valuable in a lot of careers. And it's actually related to the math. It's related to the content area. For reading, we could be reading an article in science that relates to the content. We're going to do a close read, and we're going to identify verbs and nouns and things like this, and use that to understand the content better. So it's related to what we're doing. It's not just, we're reading just to read. We want it to benefit and bolster the content that we're already going through. And speaking the same thing. Speaking and oral communication are probably some of the most important communication skills that our students are going to leave with. And we are trying to incorporate those into as many classes as possible. So that's kind of what we've got going on in the school. So you may be asking yourself, why is there such a focus on literacy? So really that focus comes from reading is the foundation of all other content areas. I always say it is the rising tide that raises all boats. Okay. So reading, writing, and speaking are interconnected, and a deficiency in one can lead to deficiencies in other areas. They definitely are tied together. Students who can't read well typically can't write well, and they also then can't speak well. Very rarely do you find somebody who can speak very clearly and articulately and then has difficulty writing or reading. They all kind of work together, and they all benefit one another. So the reading level is also then key to being successful on our standardized tests, which we talked about in our last video on our school accountability. Just about everything on there has some sort of testing component that our students need to be proficient at. So if your reading level is well below grade level, you're going to struggle mightily on these standardized tests. And one of the best examples of that is a cluster question. I want to show you one of these on an NDSA. This is actually a practice question, and this is from our math assessment. So this is a math question, and this is the amount of reading and understanding that our students are expected to have in order to answer these questions. It does not solve the equation. It requires quite a bit of reading comprehension and being able to understand even what the question is asking, then being able to glean the correct information, then use your math skills to figure out what the answer to the question is. So again, this is the math portion of it. This is not even our English and reading side of our state tests that our students are held accountable for. So it is absolutely paramount that our students have exceptional reading skills and exceptional literacy skills, including writing and speaking, in order to be successful on those tests and ultimately make us score better in our school accountability. So what can I do as a parent to help? These are things you can do. Encourage your student to read at home. 20 minutes a day can make all the difference. We're trying to give them 23 minutes every day to read here, and it's really only 4 days a week because we don't have Wolves Time on Wednesday with our late starts. So if you can get another 20 minutes at home, the students' reading ability and then their writing and speaking abilities are going to follow. Okay, and that can be anything that they want to read. Encourage your student to work on IXL. Many of our math and English teachers assign IXL as part of their course, but you can also work on building up skills in the diagnostic. So your teachers, if you can reach out to your teachers for any other guidance if you've worked on and passed or have mastered all of the required IXL skills, there's always more you can work on. And that diagnostic area within IXL is a great way to do that. It essentially gives you questions, it shows where you're weak, and then it helps you build up those weaknesses. There's also specific pathways to specific scores on the ACT. So if you're really looking at trying to get a high score on the ACT, you can look at one of these pathways, and IXL will say you need to work and master these skills in order to get that score. So there's lots of great help on IXL. You can also encourage your student to retake assessments that they have not done well on. Go through that retake policy, go through that relearn policy, learn the content, learn the material. That is the best way to be successful beyond high school and beyond the current grade that you're in. If you want to do well in geometry and algebra 2, master the content in algebra 1 as much as you possibly can. Make every effort for your student to be at school on time each and every day. Attendance is key. It is very, very difficult for students to become proficient when they're not here. It's hard enough for them to become proficient when they are here. So please make every effort to be at school every period, every day. And then send the message that this content is important for them to learn, not just to get a good grade. Okay, we have a pervasive attitude within our students that the only reason they're doing these things is so they can get a good grade and move on. We're really trying to flip that script and get them to understand that the material that we are trying to teach them is important for them to know and important for them to learn. Will they use all of it every single day in their adult life? Of course not. But we have an obligation and responsibility to try to prepare them whatever path they choose. So that's why it is important for them to learn and master and know this content. So if you can send that message as well and talk about learning more than grading, that's going to help us in our pursuit to change our student culture. So that is the end of my presentation this week. Next week or next video, I'm going to talk about Choice Ready and that initiative and go into some of the details and some different things we are doing to kind of boost those numbers and make sure we meet our goal for Choice Ready. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Otherwise, have a great day.